Today we're going to talk about real big tarps, like real big. So big, we have Alex up in a tree. What's up guys, Dan here, Coalcracker, Bushcraft. We are going to be talking about big tarps. We're going to be using our new 10x10 for these two setups. Now these are traditional setups that you've seen a million times on this channel, but I'm going to show you how you actually do them the proper way when using bigger, heavier tarps. We want to eliminate the sag, we need to use the seams differently, all that stuff. Alright, so what we're dealing with here, just so we're all clear on it, is a true 10x10, literally 10 foot by 10 foot. It's not rectangle, it is square 10 foot by 10 foot. So to actually achieve that, we tried all different stuff. You need to have, especially with these different setups, you need to have two seams, which you can see right here, meaning 3 panels, okay? Putting one center seam in, a lot of different issues with that. Number one, fabric width. Number two, the weight of this tarp, it just doesn't mend well. So everything is gonna be based off of being able to use these center, I call them center seams. It's not a true center seam, but seams down the middle of the tarp. So the first shelter we're gonna look at, the most traditional tarp shelter that you can ever have, the lean-to, okay? So first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna set up a ridge line. Typically with the ridge line, we're gonna go about belt height. Because this tarp's a little bit bigger, we went a little bit higher, so like mid to upper abs. With that, now it's time to actually attach the tarp to the line. We're gonna use all the same stuff. We're gonna use those prussiks to pull it nice and tight and all that good stuff, but then we need to think ahead a little bit just because of the size. So as I said earlier, these tarps have 2 seams, okay, not just one center seam. So once the tarp's up, there's going to be a tremendous amount of sag in the tarp. So we want to jump ahead by taking our stick and inserting it in the loops, okay? What we're going to imagine right here is that I'm setting up this lean-to that the front of it is facing all of you, the camera, okay? So what we want to do is we want to make sure that the direction of our center seams is facing the opening, meaning they're running this way, not that way. That's important. Now, these tarps have 3 tie-out loops on each seam. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to the center tie-out loop and I'm going to insert my stick. So I'm going to insert it here and I'm going to insert it here and get it somewhat centered off. All right, now I can take my tarp and attach it to my ridge line and then we'll build out from there. All right, so you can see now I am attached to my ridge line. I pull it nice and tight. One question that I do get asked often is, should we attach these loops to the ridge line? Honestly, they serve no purpose on this style setup. Other tarp setups, they will work for things, but you don't need to attach those loops to your ridge line ever. So now I'm going to take my ends and I'm going to stake these out. Again, I want to pull as much tension on my tarp as possible. I'm going to do this to the back 2 sides, again creating that lean-to style. The more tension I create here, the easier it is to be able to lift this center point up with my stick. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to pull this nice and tight and I'm going to stick my peg in just like that. And now, because it is a larger tarp, it's going to be hard for me to get right into that center point. I'm going to take my center tie-out line and I'm going to tie it right in the middle of this stick, okay? So you can use any kind of knot you would like for this. I think the quickest and easiest one here for us of what we're doing is just going to be a clove hitch, but hey, use your imagination. Whatever you think is awesome, go ahead and use it, all right? So I have that set up. Now I'm going to take my tent peg and pull out my other side. Now, as you can see right in this area, ton of sag in there, and that's something we don't want. Number one, that's going to just collect any type of precipitation. Number two, it's going to be laying against our body. We don't want that either. So watch when I pull that center tie up out with the stick now, how nice it is. So I'm going to pull up that center, watch. Look at all that loft. Whoa, loft. We have so much room in there, you can now charge more for rent. So what we're going to do is we're going to tie this up, okay, to a tree behind it somewhere, which I already have all this prepped to do this. And now we are talking. I mean, this thing is legitimately massive at this point. You can fit so many people under here, or if you have a ton of gear with you or whatever you need, you can get it done. So I'm gonna crawl in here. You can see we have lots of area, lots of room. I'm a big guy and super comfortable. I can spread stuff out, put 2 cases of beer on each side, at least a backpack on each side, 6, 7 wool blankets, another cooler of beer in the back, and I'll be good. So you can see how this back stick now is aiding in lifting up the shelter. Now, one thing to take into consideration with this is, again, we talked belt height, like high ab height for that ridge line. If you know the weather is going to be bad, you're going to want to bump that up, which sounds counterintuitive, but due to the size of this tarp, the lower you make that ridge line, the flatter the front end of this roof becomes, and the more material is going to catch, or precipitation it's going to catch during the storm. So the way to beat that, of course, raise that front end up, and then that'll put more pitch on it. But yeah, lots of room, pretty awesome shelter setup. Okay, so we're gonna build right off of this shelter system now. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna take it down, we're gonna keep the ridge line the same height, and we are going to make a modified A-frame shelter. So now what I've done is I've taken this down off the ridge line, and I am going to rotate the way this is. So remember, those seams before shot towards the front of the shelter. Now with the A-frame, we're gonna turn that so the seams run the same length as the actual ridge line itself. I'm just going to throw this over. And now what we have is we have a seam here and a seam on the other side. What you do want to do with this, because again, larger shelter, make sure it's super secure, is to take your tie out, and you're going to still use your prusik, and you're going to pull this tight. Now on each one of these seams, we're going to do the same thing we did with the lean-to, and that is we're going to insert a stick through all of our loops. Next step is you are going, while it's still in a hanging position, you're going to take some more rope or twine or whatever you have, and you're going to tie the center seams. Okay, you're going to tie that rope to the center seams. What this is going to do is this is going to allow us to get some lift out of this thing once it's set up. Okay, so go ahead, tie this ahead of time. It's just going to make life easier in the next step. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to stake out all 4 corners. Again, pulling it as taut as possible. Once that is done and complete, then we're going to go to the next step where the magic happens. So I'm gonna have this position just like this, which you can see right now looks like a nice A-frame, everything looks good, but when we pull out those 2 sides to tie them off the trees, you're gonna see how much better this is on the inside, like right now. So what you're going to notice now is we have a lot of lift and loft going on with this shelter. We still have nice angles to shed off any precipitation, but what we're gaining in here also is a ton of extra room on the inside. We're reducing that sag and making everything better. So this is very nice, really nice and wide open, and it works out really, really well. All right, so there you go. That is our 2 traditional setups, the A-frame and the lean-to, but utilizing a bigger tarp without that center seam the way smaller tarps are. We had to utilize sticks to help modify everything. So these shelters are absolutely awesome. Again, they provide a ton of room for you, and they're just them little tweaks on everything that we know and use so often out here in the woods. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can click the subscribe and like button below. If you're interested in a 10x10 tarp, you can also click the link in the description. It'll take it right over our webpage so you can check those things out. We're so excited we finally got these things dialed in. And then what else? Also check us out at coalcrackerbushcraft.com, and also stay in the woods.